speaking about the leadership dilemma, in your minds, what is the biggest challenge we face? Anyone have any ideas? What would you say is the biggest challenge we are facing in this inescapable digital transformation?
Attention.
Attention, I like that one. Our ability to capture our attention, our ability to stay on focus,
Filter.
the ability to filter, the curation need. What other ones do we have?
Change your behaviors.
Changing our behaviors, because we've been built and, I would say, formed differently, and all of a sudden everything's changing. Sorry? Culture. So the culture of the enterprise, the need for more entrepreneurial spirit, this kind of thing. Well, the one that I wanted to put in front of you is to think about the leadership's mindset. Yeah, and we were brought up in a different way. But the thing that they're constantly faced with is this. The dilemma between the quarterly number, the short term, and the long term. Because that is what they are being judged on, the quarterly results. And yet, when we're talking about digital, we used to think it was all free. We used to think it was all quick. And like some people will say, you don't build an overnight success overnight. You build it in 7 years. So we need to think about building community. We need to think about being generous. We need to think about all sorts of things which don't necessarily bring me a return on investment today. And I think this is the biggest dilemma that leaders are facing today. Yep, another one is this panoply of buzzwords that we hear all the time. Real time, gotta have more empathy, e-reputation, authenticity. All these buzzwords are out there. This is the other dilemma, making those real. It's one thing to have the idea. It's a whole nother thing to execute, to make it happen, de facto, inside the company, just like outside the company. This one, for me, resumes quite nicely this notion. We want to be transparent and beautiful. How many of you know how to be transparent and remain beautiful? Warts and all. So the challenge we have here is we have to be authentic, we have to be transparent, and yet we still want to maintain an image, right? Because we are in marketing, we want to make sure that ours looks the best. And yet, we need to be transparent. And that's a hard thing to organize in terms of our culture and getting the whole company behind you. If we want to talk about authenticity, well, then we need to have some credibility. And one of the biggest challenges we have today is there's a total lack of trust with regard to marketers and with regard to business leaders, brands. If you look at this poll that was just released in November of 2012 in Gallup. This is for the US, but I'm going to guess that it holds true for France. It shows who are the most trusted métiers or professions. Nurses, as usual, on top. Pharmacists, medical doctors. Then down here we have business executives, below journalists. Ouch. In France, I happen to know journalists are right down with politicians. And then down here, we have advertising practitioners, below stockbrokers. Ouch. Below senators. Insurance salespeople. Now there's a challenge, a mantle to break. So marketers and business executives have lost the trust of the employee, much less the client. So we need to redevelop credibility. So one of the things we use is communications. In French, we say la com. I can hardly think of a more derogatory expression, la com. Managing perfection. In English, we say comms, but it has very much the same kind of meaning behind it. Here's the challenge. Got many types of communications out there, but I like to look at 3 in particular. The first one is your commercial message, where you're talking to clients and hopefully new clients. You sell to them these great new products that are the best in the world. Then the second one is you go to shareholders and you tell them, well, we're doing very well. We're going to increase profitability by 14 points. We're going to cut 500 heads. We're going to close a factory. And business is great. Then you have a third message, and that one is the employer brand message. And you go out and you tell new people to come work at this company. It's great. It's a great place to work. We pay excellently. Huh. The problem is that these three messages oftentimes are in dissonance. And the person who is listening to all three of those is your employee. And really, it ought to be the CEO. So the challenge is making sure that these three messages are aligned and feeling congruent, because the more there's a gap between all three, the bigger the problem of credibility and power in your message. Unless you think that you can hide from that, we now have sites that help expose all that. Not necessarily so strong in France yet, but Glassdoor. But watch out, there's now another one called Meilleure Entreprise, which does the same kind of thing as Glassdoor in France. I recommend you go take a look at Meilleures Entreprises, because I believe they will start to take the same kind of strength that Glassdoor has. You all know Glassdoor, right? Who doesn't know Glassdoor? Anyone not know Glassdoor? Okay, so thank you for that. Glassdoor, it's a site where you can go and you can hear comments about how internal leaders are. Is a manager good? And then transparency on a thing called salary. How much do you earn? So it's done anonymously. You post. So instead of the HR person you telling you their song story, you have people inside the company who are posting what the culture is and how people are. Meilleure Entreprise will be doing the same thing in France. And then there's a third one, which I think is also of interest when we're going to speak about with Lawrence about LinkedIn. It's called Choose Your Boss. Anyone heard Choose Your Boss? All right, so a few people have. This is a thing that's launched by Le Figaro Classifieds. And what it is it's an attempt to hire technology people, geeks, because the way we've been talking to them has turned them off. So what Choose Your Boss is trying to do, because technology is important, getting good programmers is important, and keeping them is even more difficult, Choose Your Boss is all about getting in touch with geeks, helping to recruit them and bring them in. So I'll be interested in your perspective on that, Lawrence, later. So my suggestion, and Damien said this, and I'm just going to rebound on it. I say, instead of calling it comms, why don't we call it conversation, and become the conductor of conversation instead of the director of comms, or le DIRCOM. Speaking about authenticity, looking at leadership, is the boss tweeting? I recommend anyone who's not on it, follow Tweet Bosses, at Tweet Bosses, where they are showing, this is something that Nicolas Borda has done, where they're showing all the bosses, C-suite people who are on Twitter. Highly recommend it. I think it's good encouragement. But let's say that's not enough. Question is the boss walking the talk? Demonstrating, doing, being the change that they want to see happen in the company? And if they're not, then we got a big problem. So these are part of what I say are the leader's dilemma. And I want to finish with a little case in point. Nice little example of my understanding of a company that probably doesn't have leaders walking the talk just yet. They're doing lots of great things, but they still have way to go. And here's an example. Eurostar. How many of you have taken the Eurostar? Beautiful. It's a fantastic service. My gosh, in 2 hours and 20 minutes, you're in London. God, is that great. And you sit down and you're relaxed. You have nice seats, even in economy or first. It's beautiful. But what about this? Oh, shite. You're running out of battery because you got 2 hours, 20 minutes of work. But here's a beautiful thing. Eurostar thinks about this. In fact, in 2002, I don't know if you've seen this, but in 2002, they designed and implemented in their lounges a place to recharge your batteries. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, good. 2002, they put this in place. Interesting. So I take a little close-up look. This is neat. Wow, if I'm a boss, I'm happy. I'm going to use this. I'm going to see how good it is. So I'm going to go up to it. I'm going to take out my iPhone. And I'm going to just recharge it just for the sake of it. Even if it's at 90%, I want 100, just because it exists. Can you see the problem? How can they do that? Isn't there somebody who has an iPhone in Eurostar? Since 2002, they have this up, and they're not making it correct. So when you go back to this one here, all of these are wrong. The iPhone 5 has a BlackBerry connection. The iPhone 5 has the iPhone 5 has an iPhone 4 connection. Brilliant. Talk about pissing me off. Fine effort, execution is key. And the execution would have been better if someone at Eurostar in management actually used this thing to see if it worked. This is my opinion. How about this? You've all been on the Eurostar. This is the Thalys. You might have seen something looking like this. You're walking down the train, and you go in, and I was just, every single seat had two screens, two screens, two screens. Little ones, big ones. That's the question, right? Where the heck is the Wi-Fi? I mean, hello? Yeah, it's a problem. We're having challenges because we don't know which technology to use. We're having challenges because it's the French against the English. We're having challenges because we don't give a toss about the customer experience. Because in America now, they're putting Wi-Fi in airplanes. I gotta believe it's harder to put a Wi-Fi in an airplane than on a train. By the way, they've got Wi-Fi in the tube in London. I mean, that old wreck. I mean, this is a modern thing. 2 hours and 20 minutes? That is money. The people who are traveling on the Eurostar from London to Paris, many of them bankers, some of them lawyers, consultants, God forbid, billable hours. They could be working for 2 hours and 20 minutes, but no, we don't want them to do that. So if management were on the road, and I hope there's no one in Eurostar here, but maybe, yeah, it'd be good to provoke the conversation. If they were going on the road and they were living and walking the talk, then they would know how important it is to be customer-centric, to put Wi-Fi on board. I know they have plans for it, but God, 2004 will probably have 2G. Sorry, 2014. So this is it, the inescapable digital transformation. We have major challenges internally for human resources to work on the culture, to help identify, bring up the collective intelligence of our people inside. And then we have what I would call the big dilemma for leadership and leading the transformation that needs to happen, for which Brian will talk about later. That is my rant for the morning.